All right, 7 o'clock, and the May 6, 2021 meeting of the Coppell Board of Adjustments is now in session. All right, item number 2 is citizens' appearance. Is there any citizens here who come to speak on anything that does not have anything to do with the agenda? Okay. On to item number 3, consider the approval of the February 4th, 2021 Board of Adjustments minutes. Has everybody had a chance to go over the minutes? Any issues? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
And I have a second. Okay. All in favor? Roll call vote, please. State your name and approve. Michelle, okay. Michelle approves.
Rhett Hickey.
Mark LeGros approve.
Laura Ketchum approve.
Okay. All right. Item number 4. Public hearing to consider the approval of a variance from the platted fence line setback for the Vistas of Coppell Phase 1A to allow for the construction of a maximum 9-foot-tall wood fence in proximity to the west property line facing Bella Vista Drive within the subdivision's platted 15-foot fence setback for side property lines facing public streets on the property located at 518 Waterview Drive in Coppell. That would be in Vistas of Coppell 1A, Block N, Lot 33, as requested by owner Dibya Mohapatra. All right, now we'll hear first from the building official on this.
Mr. Chairman, before I present the case, I believe that I and the other speakers need to be sworn in.
Yes. Is anybody here going to speak before the board tonight? Okay, anybody who's going to speak before the board tonight, could y'all all stand up, including the building official, and take the oath, please? Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about ready to give to the Board of Adjustment is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. All right.
All right, thank you, Chairman. The first variance case on tonight's agenda is for the property located at 518 Waterview Drive, and they are seeking relief from a fence location requirement. The applicant is proposing to construct a maximum 9-foot-tall wood fence in proximity to the west side property line in violation of the 15-foot fence setback and the provisions of PD 149 SF7. The platted fence setback line is from the plat for the Vistas of Coppell Section 1A. The requirement is echoed in the zoning for the subdivision. This is a portion of the plat for the subdivision. It's marked 15-foot BL and FL. In this case, FL means fence line setback. This is a requirement of the Vistas of Coppell, but it is not common among our residential subdivisions. The same requirement is spelled out in the applicable PD number 149, which states fencing of side yards adjacent to proposed streets shall have a 15-foot setback. The fence is currently compliant with the setback line. In the current configuration, it creates a small wedge-shaped side yard, which is not particularly usable space for the applicant. Because of the fence line setback, the rest of the rear yard is rather small as well. The applicant is seeking more usable area for her kids to play. The applicant has expressed a concern that squirrels and rodents have easy access from the fence to the house via its current proximity to the corner. And the applicant also cites issues with trash and pet waste in the unfenced portion of the side yard. The granting of this variance would create continuity between the side and rear yards and dramatically increase the amount of usable space. It will also increase the length of the rear fence to allow the owners to install a sliding driveway gate, which they have also sought permission to do. Here are some photos of the existing fence. You can see the 15-foot strip of green space between the fence and the side property line as it currently is. These photos help illustrate just how close the existing fence comes to the corner of the house. It's important that we give some context to this request. The 15-foot fence setback is not a common or citywide requirement. The Board of Adjustment has actually granted several variances from this requirement in the vistas of Coppell, most of which were in the early 2000s when the subdivision was developing. The variances that were granted include the applicant's immediate neighbor across the alley. There are 4 houses in this area that abut Bella Vista Drive on the side. Of those, 3 have been granted variances to place their fence on the side property lines. The property that is the subject of this request is the only one that has not yet received a variance to do so. In this image, the yellow star is the applicant's property. The circled properties are ones that have already received variances to move their fence to the side property line. 523 Forest Hill is directly across the alley. Then the next 2 fences in order down the street are the same. You can also see from the aerial that the houses that have been granted variances have much more usable yard space. These lines indicate roughly where the fences lie. If the goal of this ordinance was to assure visual consistency, then the game has changed. The applicant's existing fence is out of line with the others abutting Bella Vista. If this variance was approved, the proposed fence would be made to comply with all other codes and ordinances. And that includes the requirement that fences facing streets have the posts and horizontal rails on the inside. So the finished side would be out facing the street. The board has the option to approve, deny, modify, or attach conditions to this request. Staff recommends approval of this variance for consistency with the surroundings. If this variance is approved, staff suggests that it be made to match the fence across the alley and the others that have been granted variances. All of those fences are located at the side property line. Does the board have any questions for staff?
This area here is a little bit different than usual. This is a planned development. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And if this planned development were just a regular part of the city, so to speak, what would the city's requirement be for something like that?
There is not a citywide setback requirement for side yard fences.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Is the applicant here or on Zoom or? Well, you're talking to somebody who's technically challenged. If they're on Zoom, how do I get her on the screen?
Divya, can you hear us?
I'd like to hear from the applicant if that's all possible.
Divya, we can. We can see it. It looks like you're unmuted, but if you're on the phone, if you're using your phone, it's *6 to unmute. There you go.
Hello. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can hear
Can
you.
you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Please, if you would, state your, are you, Mr. Mohapatra? Are you there?
Yes, this is Mohapatra, Mr. Mohapatra. Thank
Okay,
you
would you
for,
please, if you would, before you give your
arranging this meeting.
testimony, if you would, please, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about ready to give to the Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Answer by saying, I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, would you please state your name and address for the record and give us your testimony, please?
Yes, my name is Dibya. First name is Dibya, Dibya, and my last name is Mohapatra, Dibya Mohapatra. And my address is 518 Waterview Drive, Coppell. And the testimony is I am applying for fence extension to, replace our existing automatic gate from a swing arm to motorized, which will give us more space. And also my side yard fence is very close. At one point, it is very close to the building, due to which squirrels and rodents, they go to the roof and create a lot of trouble for us. And it is really difficult for us. And the other thing is we have to manage the pet waste and also the trash that is there in the side yard. And yeah, that is one of the reasons why we would like to, extend our side yard fence. Plus, it will give us more space for our growing kids to play. And that's precisely my testimony here. And I would request and for the board to provide it.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? If there's no other questions for the applicant, I'll go ahead and open the discussion to the board. I'll start. This particular, the Vistas has come up on more than one occasion since I've been here, and it's all had to do with fences. Mm-hmm. And I'm not quite sure how the story went, but apparently there was the plan development had certain fence requirements, and then maybe halfway through them found out they were inconsistent with the city or inconsistent with what they originally intended, and kind of changed it halfway through the development of that entire subdivision, and kind of left some people with a short straw, so to speak. In that respect, I find that probably would constitute a hardship that's not self-imposed. What are your thoughts on that?
Agreed. It seems like it's.
Okay, now I'll open up for a motion if everybody wants to give me a motion.
Mr. Chairman, we did have someone who signed up to speak on this case.
Have somebody else to speak on this case?
Yes.
Okay, hang on a second. Let's hear from them. Who else is that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, the public hearing is still open.
Thank you.
Who am I speaking with?
This is Eric Lee.
Okay, Mr. Lee, would you please state your full name and address for the record, and then you'll need to take the oath too. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about ready to give the Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Eric Lee. My address is 534 Waterview Drive, just next to this house, a few houses down the street. What I want to say is I'm the original owner for the house, and so I lived there for for over many years. So the original house owner, they built the fence along with other houses, what is shown in the picture originally. And a few years later, city forced them to tear down the fence and reset them back. Yeah, as a current configuration. The problem is when we're driving out from the alleyway, is kind of dangerous when they have a high fence and the fence extended out. And 530, the Waterview Drive is a major intersection with the Bella Vista. So that's why that particular house, the city has been forced original owner to tear down the fence and reset back to current configuration. With consideration current owner, I do agree if there's a creating hardship, they can extend a little bit away from the house, but not what they show on the picture, because the city has been already proved, has been against original owner to tear down the fence. How come the city changing this again to disprove your own action a few years back? So basically what I'm saying is I agree to the house configuration, and so that's stay it is, or change the house fence as iron fence, the iron post, the iron fence, because many new construction, many new communities, they all allow iron fence around the major intersection, kind of a major street corners. And if they want to extend to near the street, they should consider the iron fence. If they don't, then they may only extend only a few feet away from their current configuration or stay at the current configuration. That would be all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I apologize for not getting you, but this is a little bit new to us. We usually have everybody on site for these meetings. So thank you for your testimony. Any other questions for any other questions for him?
Mr. Lee, can I just clarify, is your concern that if we grant this variance and the current owners move the fence out closer to the street, that there's going to be a visibility issue for cars that are turning?
The problem with the driving, when we get into the alley and they get out of the alley, is very dangerous. It's very hard to see visually the coming traffic.
Okay.
Mr. Lee, I have another question to follow up on that.
That's one of the reasons originally the city had been against original owner. They built a fence like like other houses, what is shown along the street. There's like a 4 houses there. Initially, they built a fence exactly like that. And then the city forced them to tear down the fence and reset to the current configuration. Because what they said is because during the city code, and they cannot stay there because it's dangerous for us to driving in and out through the alley.
Thank you. So do you suppose that if there were a visibility cut put in that fence, like you see in the pictures on the other side of the alleyway where the fence is at an angle, specifically to look for oncoming traffic and pedestrians, do you think that if they put that visibility cut on the proposed fence, then that would work?
That would not work.
Why not?
Do you want? Why do you think that would? Tell me why you think that wouldn't work.
Okay, because when you're driving that, like what I stated, original owner, they made that fence already, and the city has been forced them to tear down. So I trust whatever the city decision originally, and so there's everything is okay. From our concern is safety, and for their concern is their child can have more room to play. So that's why I do have a sympathy for them to maybe extend the yard a few feet away from their current configuration, but not what they propose here, because this one has been against by the city already. How come the same city at one point and make this code and apply to one person, one house owner, not apply another house owner?
I cannot answer why the city might have acted the way they did previously. We do not, none of these hearings set precedent. Every hearing is heard individually, and every request is heard individually. So we'll certainly take your testimony into consideration. Do you have anything else to add?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee, could you state your address again, please?
534 Waterview Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We're still in public hearing on this case. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do. Is there a stop sign at the corner of Bella Vista and Waterview?
There is on Bella Vista.
Okay.
How far back from where the fence now sits are they asking to move it out?
It appears that they're requesting to move it out approximately 10 feet. It would be at the line of an easement that runs along that property line.
So it's still within the allowed setback, but Mr. Lee's concern is visibility, which sounds like it's an existing problem now. I'm wondering if that's accurate.
I have not driven the alley.
Thank you.
And Mr. Lee.
Yes. I'm looking at the first photograph in the picture that shows the alley and shows the trees. And I'm looking at the fence and the neighbors and the neighboring property on the other side of the alley, and I'm noticing a visibility cut in their fence, a 45-degree cut.
Yes, sir.
Coming out of the alleyway, I would imagine that if you had a visibility cut on both sides, then you would be able to effectively see down the street on both sides without any real degree without any interference, provided that you're coming out of the alley in a slow pace. And the alley is not a street. There's no 25 or 30 mile an hour speed limit going down there. So coming out of any alley, cars should be not going any more than 10 miles an hour. So I would imagine that the visibility cut, if we could maybe, if we were to grant the variance, we would have to put a condition in that they would have to have a visibility cut put in that fence. Does that sound reasonable?
It does to me as well.
The, we've closed the public hearing to the board.
Just pardon me, but I need some smarter people on this. I'm not sure how tall the fence is now, but he's talking about a 9-foot fence. Is with the, what you call it, a visibility cut? Yeah. Would that, the height impact, or with the visibility cut, that shouldn't make a difference?
I don't see how the height would make a difference in lateral visibility.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any other, anything else to discuss, or somebody would like to make a motion?
Well, I would make be introduced into.
I second that motion.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve the variance with the stipulation that a visibility cut would have to be put in the fence at that corner. And I have a second. I'll take a roll call vote. All in favor? Oh, well, anyway, Michelle?
Yes. I'm in favor. Michelle Anderson's in favor.
Mr. Hickey?
In favor?
Approve.
Laura Ketchum, approve.
Kimberly Grubb, approve.
Okay, the motion's passed 5-0. Item number 5. Public hearing. Consider the approval of a variance request from Section 9-2-6, parenthetical D, of the City of Coppell's fence ordinance to allow the construction of an approximately 6-foot-tall wood fence in the front yard forward of the platted front yard setback on the southern portion of the east side of the property at 123 Lodge Road in Coppell. That would be Carrick Blot A, Lot 2R, as requested by owner Rory Carrick. And we'll hear from the building official now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we proceed, I would like to formally admit the previous slides into evidence for item 4. Furthermore, I'd like to admit all subsequent slides into evidence for their respective case numbers. Our next two cases, items 5 and 6, are for 110 and 123 Lodge Road. I'd like to start by giving an introduction to these two cases together. The requests are also seeking relief from a fence location requirement. Now, I must emphasize that these are two separate public hearing items. However, the requested fence is continuous between the 110 and 123 Lodge lots. They are under the same ownership and use and have a shared history in existing conditions. In an effort to minimize repetition, I'd like to present the background on items 5 and 6 jointly. Then we will move into the two cases individually for the hearings. The request is to install a 6-foot-tall wood fence in the front yard along Lodge Road, replacing a 4-foot iron fence. The fence would be located at or near the front property line. It would extend along Lodge Road, then return to the house at the north and wrap around the south corner along East Sandy Lake Road. The fence extends across the entire frontage of 110 Lodge and as far as the corner of the house at 123. Fence Ordinance Section 926, Section D, says it would be unlawful to erect or maintain a fence within the front yard of any lot, from the front building line to the front lot line. The entirety of this fence would be located at or near the front property line, entirely within the front yard as designated by zoning. There is an existing fence at the front property line. It is an iron fence approximately 4 feet tall along Lodge, plus a section of 6-foot wood fencing as it nears the southern corner at Sandy Lake. The existing front yard fencing is non-conforming but legal by two different criteria. The fence along Lodge Road is the same or similar to one that existed prior to a replat, and we're calling that one grandfathered. Now, I've used the word grandfathered even though I know that the board and legal counsel have traditionally shied away from that word. The fence along Lodge Road was labeled grandfathered in a prior variance hearing, and being that there are two different kinds of legally non-conforming fencing on this property, I'm going to stick with the word grandfathered herein just to help differentiate the two. And the term grandfathered in this context can be taken to mean it was approved by right due to a pre-existing condition. For short, grandfathered. So the section along Lodge we're calling grandfathered. It existed prior to replatting. The section connecting the fence along Lodge to the house was approved by a prior variance in 2001. The Board of Adjustment approved the variance to connect it to the front corner of the house in order to complete the enclosure of the pool area. This picture is of the iron fence, or at least what you can see of it through the vegetation, taken from the south end looking north along Lodge. And here we have a different perspective looking southward from the north end of the fence where it begins in front of 123 Lodge and extending southward. The existing legally non-conforming 4-foot iron fence is legal by grandfathering and prior variance. It can remain in its current form indefinitely, regardless of the outcome of this hearing. However, changing the physical characteristics of something that was legally non-conforming terminates those non-conforming rights. So the applicant's proposal to replace the iron fence with a wood fence in the same front yard location requires a variance from the Board of Adjustment. Here we have a comparison of aerial photos from 2001 and now. These properties have kind of a unique history. The property originally fronted to the south on Sandy Lake Road. There was a historic home on the property which the owners later donated to the Coppell Historical Society, at which time the house was moved off the lot and relocated to Heritage Park in Old Town. There was also an existing fence down the east side. When the property was redeveloped approximately 20 years ago, it was no longer desirable for a residential property to have frontage on Sandy Lake. So the frontage was flipped to the east and the properties were assigned Lodge Road addresses. Basically, the side yard became the front yard, and the owners were allowed to retain fencing along Lodge. The resulting residential lots are wider than they are deep. In fact, the lot depth doesn't even meet the minimum zoning requirement. 123 had to get a variance from the board before it could be developed. The result is an unusual configuration where the side yard is used like a backyard, including the location of the pool. The properties are also unique in that the vacant lot at 110 Lodge can be used as an extension of 123's side yard. The existing iron fence is supplemented by a mature hedgerow approximately 7 to 8 feet tall. It has the visual effect of a wall along Lodge. Over the years, the density of the shrubs has afforded the applicants a good deal of privacy in the use of their yard. Unfortunately, the owner has expressed a concern that the shrubs are dying. I'm not an expert, but at the time of my site visit in mid-April, many of the shrubs were browning or thinning. If the bushes had to be removed and replaced, the owners would experience a loss of privacy in the use of their yard. The owners have done extensive landscaping on both lots. The lot depth is less than 100 feet and the front setback is 25 feet. So if they were made to relocate their fence to comply, they would lose over a quarter of the usable yard space with the potential impact to the property values. The owners furnished these photos with a hypothetical line representing the approximate location of the fence if it were made to comply with the build line. You can see it actually cuts through some of their landscaping. If this variance were approved, the proposed fence would be made to comply with all other codes and ordinances. The posts and horizontal members would have to be on the inside of the fence as it faces the street. Does the board have any questions for staff on the background information up to this point? Okay, then we'll move on to the individual cases. Item 5 is the variance request for 123 Lodge Road. The applicant is seeking to build a 6-foot-tall wood fence in the front yard along Lodge Road, replacing the 4-foot iron fence. Again, Section 926D of the fence ordinance states that it's unlawful to erect a fence within the front yard, which in this case, by ordinance, would be defined as anywhere forward of the house. The existing iron fence along the front property line is accepted as being grandfathered by a pre-existing condition. In the segment connecting the Lodge Road fence to the corner of the house was granted a variance in 2001. The existing non-conforming fence is legal and can remain as is regardless of this hearing. The proposed change of materials does trigger that loss of non-conforming rights, so this variance would be needed to place a wood fence as proposed in the front yard. Here we're looking at the house from the front. You can see how the fence juts out from the front left corner toward Lodge, and then you can see the fence line extending down Lodge Road. And again, the lot at 123 is wider than it is deep, which is not all that common for residential lots in Coppell. In fact, it required a variance for the lot depth before the owners could build on it. The side yard does function like their backyard. Shortly after the house was built, they installed a pool immediately next to the house to the south. The side yard is landscaped, and that landscape does extend into the lot next door. The iron fence is supplemented by hedges, but there is some concern for their health. If the shrubs were to die, they would lose privacy for not just their yard, but for their pool area as well. The owner's right to privacy in their yard and pool may be compromised. If they were to comply with the required fence setback, it would result in a loss of about a quarter of the side yard space that the owners have used and enjoyed for the last 20 years. The dashed line is the approximate location of where the fence would be if it complied. You can see that it would come close to the edge of the pool and actually cut across the pool decking. All of this could potentially diminish the property's value. If approved, the proposed 6-foot wood fence would be made to comply with all other regulations, including the horizontal members being on the inside. The board may vote to approve, deny, suggest modifications, or attach conditions to the request. Does the board have any questions for staff on this case?
Just to clarify, we're talking about 2 lots. I mean, this not for this particular case, but this one and the next one, that's only 2 lots. It's not 3. It's just...
Right, it's 2 lots.
Okay.
But this would be the public hearing for just the one.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you.
Is this request unique to those 2 lots along Lodge, or are there other places in Coppell that have similar situations and variances that have been requested?
This property is pretty unique. This is the only one I know of where this would be a factor. Staff defers to the board for what is appropriate for this lot.
I don't know a lot about fences, so I couldn't even begin to fathom what kind of modifications would be theoretically possible besides just putting a wood fence.
The board may consider location, construction, landscaping, any of those factors that is up to the board to make suggestions or modifications.
Can you show us that last overhead picture again that had pretty much any just overhead, yeah, that one. How far out does that decking go? There seems to be, I see shrubbery and then I see decking, so I don't know if the decking goes all the way to the shrubbery or if, does that make sense?
I don't have the exact dimension, but it appears to be 10 to 15 feet out.
Okay, so there's about a 10 to 15 foot gap between the end of the decking and the shrubs?
Approximately.
Okay.
What about replacing the shrubs? Is that a consideration? I know that's expensive, but so
Certainly
is a wood fence.
Everything is a
Everything is
consideration.
Yeah.
Suzanne, in your site visit, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but is it your opinion that if the shrubs weren't dying, there wouldn't be a variance request?
I don't know if the applicants would be seeking to reconstruct the fence or not. They had applied previously a couple of years ago for something similar.
Shrubs were healthy at that time,
I do not
to
know
the
that.
best of our knowledge. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Suzanne? Ms. Arnold? Is there anybody here to speak for or against the variance? Anybody in?
This is Rory Carrick. I'm the property owner. I'm on Zoom.
Is the owner here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, Mr. Carrick, how do you do?
Yeah. Good, and you? Good evening.
Okay, do you need to take the oath for me, please? Do you solemnly
Sure.
swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give the Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And state your name and address for the record, and please give us your testimony.
Dr. Rory Carrick, 123 Lodge Road in Coppell. I think that the staff has outlined the situation fairly well. It is unique, and it's been unique with this property for at least the 20 years that we've owned it. And the reason it's unique is because this piece of land wasn't, the owner at the time wouldn't sell to the subdivision for Conridge Estates. And they sort of left her property alone in a very sort of strange place, if you like, and facing onto Sandy Lake Road. So we've bought it and developed it and changed it around, and now we use both lots as our side yard, essentially, or backyard. The issue with the bushes is during the freeze in February, it's killed all these. We have about 70 bushes up there for privacy, and it's killed them all. Some are coming back, but replacing them would take years and years to grow to that height that you don't have people, walking up and staring into your yard. And Lodge Road is very, very busy, and a lot of people stopping at the top on Sandy Lake Road waiting to get through, and privacy is an issue for us. And I think the added advantage for us to one of the earlier questions in terms of a wood fence, we probably would never have done this unless these bushes had been killed. But I think from a sound perspective, Sandy Lake Road and Lodge Road has got a lot busier over the years. So we would get the added benefit of reducing some of that noise, that traffic noise into our yard. But the primary thing is the privacy.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Carrick?
How long did you say you've owned this property, Mr. Carrick?
About 20 years.
Okay.
So you were the one that developed that you're the one that had it built?
Yes, we actually bought the old house at the top of Sandy Lake Road, the one that we moved to Old Town. We lived in there for many years as our kids grew up, and then we built. We subdivided the lot along the way and then built our house down the hill, if you like, on that 123 Lodge Road.
So are you the one that put in the current iron fence, or was it already there?
I put it in. We put it in as we went
And
through
planted
that
the
lot.
shrubs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you the owner who requested a variance a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I don't think it was a variance. We replatted the land. We were looking at actually building on the top piece of on the Sandy Lake, the 110 Lodge Road property, and we moved the property line up a little. But we weren't able to sell the property. It's really difficult to build there. It's right on the corner of Sandy Lake and Lodge. Access is difficult, so we just eventually gave up and decided to landscape it and use it as a larger yard.
So this is Laura Ketchum, Mr. Carrick. Is your basic issue about a hardship the loss of privacy due to the shrubs dying? Is that what you'd say?
Yes, exactly. Because those shrubs have been there 20 years and they've grown, obviously, but we've had complete privacy. And then suddenly, literally after that storm left, we were just bare sticks and everyone staring into our yard. It's, how do you very quickly fix that? And obviously we understand the history, so we needed to go through Board of Adjustments.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Carrick, if we were to grant this variance, what kind of fence would you build? What would it look like?
It would be a board-on-board, 6-foot fence, cedar or something like that. We want to make it so it looks like it's, not a big, long, straight fence. It'll have some sort of architectural changes along the way. And then we'll landscape. There's a small piece of grass between the footpath and the fence, which we will landscape and put in plants and things like that to break it up a little.
So then you would build the fence a little bit closer to your house than the current iron fence is? Because I think the iron fence is like right next to the sidewalk, right?
There's about a foot or so of grass between the sidewalk and a retaining wall. So we have a retaining wall the whole way up. So the fence sits on top of the retaining wall, essentially. So that's where we would replace it. So it would go into exactly the same spot as the iron fence.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm going to close the public meeting on this and open it to the board for discussion. Thank you, Mr. Carrick.
Sure.
Any thoughts? This is, I understand what happened to get the house built in the first place because of the lot. He had a hardship, of course, and have to build a lot. The iron fence, non-conforming, but it's there. The thought of having a long stretch of wooden fence along that entire block, I'm having a hard time wrapping my hand around that one.
I agree with you. I mean, I've driven over there, and it's a very long strip. That's kind of why I was asking what the fence would look like. Some fences look nicer than others, but my concern is I'm struggling to see the undue hardship here. I mean, I know privacy is a concern, but I don't know that qualifies. But I'm happy to hear that I'm wrong if anyone else has any insight.
Well, I'm kind of struggling with that too, and I'm not quite sure whether this is an actual hardship, because it's not like you there's no reasonable use of the property without the variance. You can still reasonably use the property without a variance. And as long as the fence stays there, you can have it. You know, so.
Mr.
Okay. Okay, we're going to have to open up the public hearing again. Mr. Vernell, did you want to testify, gives us some testimony? Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give the Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help
Yes,
you
sir.
God.
Thank you.
Okay, state your name and address for the record,
First,
please.
Jeff Varnell, 1601 East Sandy Lake Road,
Okay.
Coppell.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I guess I missed that the public hearing was closed. I apologize for reopening the hearing. As someone who lives on Sandy Lake Road and a busy road, I can testify that I know what he's going through there. I'm very familiar with this property. I'm a 30-year resident of Coppell. I used to pick Miss Einfeld up to go to church. She lived there. She's the one that had that house that was moved. As you can tell, those bushes are in very bad repair. I can also understand, because of the storm, the reason. I know that whenever he built the property, not being able to build on Sandy Lake and Lodge there is very understandable. Not being able to sell it. I'm the broker and owner of Coppell Realty. I understand the challenges he has there selling a piece of property on a busy corner. We have long stretches of 6-foot board-on-board fence all up and down Sandy Lake Road. From Woodbridge subdivision, there are, case after case after case where we have a lot of fencing on major thoroughfares that block residential. Whether it's the front yard, side yard, from the street, you don't really know. But I'm in support of Mr. Carrick and his request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Varnell?
I actually do, Mr. Vernell, if you don't mind. Your opinion is that a long stretch of fence aesthetically is consistent with a lot of houses on Sandy Lake Road.
Correct.
So that doesn't really bother you?
Not at all.
Okay, that's what I was
I'm really
reading from
concerned
you.
as a real estate professional in this town about the integrity of property value and private property rights. This man has got a privacy issue, and it's something of very concerned with the pool there as well.
Right.
Children come over. I mean, it's just not something you want people looking in your yard when you have that type of issue there.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to speak on this? Okay, I'm going to close the meeting and open it to the board again. That's a legitimate. That's a legitimate concern. And Sandy Lake is busy. We're also talking about Lodge. Okay, and that's not Sandy Lake. This is not a cut and dried thing. I think one of the things that I'm also concerned about is that later on down the road, if that lot should be divided again and redeveloped, the front half of it, the Sandy Lake half of it, then they have a front yard variance, and that's what I'm struggling with. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, the board can place stipulations on this variance if approved.
Okay. Duly noted.
Can you hear me? Do we need to, before we make a ruling on this specific case, it's noted here in the minutes that staff had made a recommendation to possibly put a stipulation in the variance in regards to the future development of 110 Lodge. Do we need to hear that case before we decide on this one? Is that out of order, or is that pertinent?
That's up to the board.
I'd be interested to hear what recommendations that staff may have in regards to. To be honest, I have no issue, to be honest, with the requested variance of changing the configuration of the fence from a material standpoint, and then maintaining the fence line. To me, it would seem, in regards to the other residents' testimony, there's a lot of this condition that already exists on Sandy Lake, and the hedge line is in disrepair. For me, as a resident of the community, I would like to see that cleaned up a bit and to maintain the consistency there. But I would like to hear maybe what staff has to say about the possible future development of 110 Lodge per their statement in the original minutes.
Would the board like staff to give testimony on item 6 before returning to the public hearing for item 5?
Yes, please.
Yes, why don't we do that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 6 is the variance request specific to 110 Lodge Road. The request is to build a 6-foot-tall wood fence in the front yard along Lodge, replacing the 4-foot iron fence. It would transition to an 8-foot-tall wood fence as it nears the intersection of Lodge and East Sandy Lake for added screening from the major street. And again, Ordinance Section 926D prohibits building a fence in the front yard, and in this case, the front yard would be defined by the zoning setback line at 25 feet. Existing fence is 4 feet in height and wrought iron. That is considered grandfathered. And the existing fencing is legally nonconforming and may remain in place regardless of the outcome of this hearing. The lot at 110 Lodge is a vacant lot except for some landscaping. It's under the same use and ownership as the residence at 123 Lodge and functions as a continuation of the side yard. As we've seen, the iron fence is supplemented by a mature hedgerow. This is the view along the front of 110 Lodge from the Sandy Lake end. Unfortunately, the shrubs do appear to be distressed in this photo, as we've discussed. And these are photos furnished by the owner from the inside of the yard, showing the landscaping and showing where the fence setback line would be. To move the fence back to the setback line would lose over a quarter of the usable yard space and decrease the value of the lot. If approved, the proposed 6 to 8 foot wood fence would be made to comply with all other codes and ordinances. And the board may approve, deny, modify, or attach conditions. However, for this lot, although the owners do not presently have plans to sell or build on the lot at 110 Lodge, there is a potential for a house to be built there in the future. It would not be desirable to have a wood fence directly in front of a house if that happens. So if approved, staff recommends that the board consider attaching conditions related to the potential future development of the vacant lot at 110 Lodge Road. Are there any questions on this case?
With regard to the potential for development of 110, they would have to probably would it have to go through the same hearing, because of the lot depth, would they have to get a variance to develop that property?
Correct.
I see. Thank you. Okay. So we've heard both the testimony, the evidence of both cases, on both the cases. Do we have any other testimony from the public on for or against this particular variance, other than what we've already heard? Okay. Anybody else before I close the public hearing and open it to the board? Okay. With regard to both of these, I really think they all should be heard together. But I think that I understand that you need you need privacy for your pool. That's something that you just have to have. If the bushes are dying and you don't no longer have privacy, you have to do something. Going back to the previous item. But the other fence, the other lot, I think maybe if we were to allow the variance, but with the stipulation that it would be revoked upon development of 110 Lodge, that might be something to consider. Any thoughts on that?
I would as well. So if if we were to build a house on 110, we'd start the process over and they'd get a new variance with.
Then the fence variance would be revoked and it would be non-conforming.
Okay.
I actually agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Want to give me a motion?
Are we doing 110 first or are we doing 120?
123?
123 first. Yes, we want to do 123 because 123 wouldn't have the stipulation, but 110 would.
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the variance for 123 as proposed.
I'll second the request.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the variance and a second.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, the owner said that he was going to match the articulated design of the wood fence to match the current fence. They would have articulation in the fencing, so it's not just board on board for the length. There'll be some articulation, post enhancements, rail enhancements. So I would include, Mr. Hickey's motion would include that type of articulation in the fence, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So you want to alter your motion?
Yes, I would like to alter it as per the staff recommendation. Do I need to state what that is?
So for the record, that would include articulation in the fence to match the current wood fence as it relates to 123, continuing through the length of the wood fence.
Thank you.
Northward, thank you.
So moved. Okay, I got a motion and a second on that with the stipulations discussed. So I'll have a vote, please. Michelle? Ms. Anderson?
Approved.
Mr.
Hickey.
Mr. Hickey?
Approve.
Approve. Laura Ketchum?
Approve.
Kimberly Grubb approved.
Okay, so the variance is passed. Now for
123.
For 123. Now, for the approval of, so I'll need a motion now to approve the variance request from section 926 for 110 Lodge Road.
I'll make the motion to approve, subject to the building of a building on 110, at which point the variance would be revoked.
I second the motion.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the variance request from 926D for the fence, provided that that fence is in harmony with the previous, with 123. and that in the event that that lot is developed, then that variance would be revoked.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, that would include the articulation to match the design of 123 and the current fence as well, is my understanding.
Yes, and it would have to be consistent with
Thank you.
123, yes. Okay, Ms. Anderson,
Approved.
Mr. Hickey,
Approved.
approve. Ms. Ketchum,
Approve.
and Ms. Grubb.
Approved.
Okay, so that variance is passed. On to item number 7. This is a public hearing to consider the approval of a variance request from Section 12-35-2, parenthetical B, parenthetical 2, parenthetical small b, and parenthetical II of the City of Coppell zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a covered patio that encroaches approximately 10 feet into the 15-foot required side yard setback by ordinance and plat on the property located at 310 Martell Drive in Coppell. It'd be Copperstone Block E, Lot 9, as requested by owner Joshua Florin. We'll hear from the building official now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last case of the night, item 7, is at 310 Martell Lane. This is an accessory building setback request. The applicant is seeking to construct a covered patio attached to the side of his house, encroaching approximately 10 feet into the 15-foot side setback. You can see the structure in yellow on the survey with the more specific dimensions of encroachment in the inset. It's shown to be approximately 5 feet from the property line at the closest corner. Article 35, the Accessory Structures Regulations, Section 1235-2B2B, requires a 15-foot side setback from the property line when a property is adjacent to a street. Now, the curved portion abuts the cul-de-sac on the side, and that still does count as a street side setback. There are a number of factors on this property that do constrain the buildable area. First of all, there is a 10-foot utility screening wall and HOA landscape easement across the north side. The screening wall for the subdivision actually encroaches about 10 feet into the property. Then there is the 15-foot side yard setback along the cul-de-sac that's the subject of this request. There's also a 10-foot utility easement within that side yard setback. And the applicant has constructed a pool, further restricting the buildable area. The resulting area is kind of in an odd-shaped place to try to fit in a new structure. This aerial gives some context. That's West Parkway Boulevard to the north along the top. Because of the cul-de-sac at the east end of Martell, the property actually abuts Martell on the front and the side, and then there is an alley on the other side. And this box shows the approximate build area for the proposed patio. Here's a look at the side of the subject property. The patio would be placed on the side next to the cul-de-sac. This is a view from the cul-de-sac. There's an existing 8-foot board-on-board fence that would conceal part of it. The applicant is proposing to build a covered patio with an outdoor kitchen and fireplace. The materials would be in character with the main house and the surrounding properties. The permit application shows that this structure would be around 900 square feet. In this rendering is the view from the rear, so the area of encroachment would be on the far left side. This would be a fairly traditional construction, mostly wood frame and shingles to match the rest of the house. Included with the memo that was distributed previously was a list of signatures from the neighbors that the applicant provided in support of their proposal. Since the property is bordered by Parkway Boulevard to the north, the alley to the west, and Martell Lane on the south and east sides, the applicant argues that there are no immediate neighbors that would be adversely impacted by the granting of this variance. If approved, the proposed structure would be made to comply with all other codes, ordinances, and easements. And the board may choose to approve, deny, propose modifications, or attach conditions. Staff does not recommend approval. However, if this variance is approved, staff requests that it include language excluding encroachment into the easement, as the board has no power to authorize such encroachment. Does the board have any questions for staff?
How far does it encroach into the easement?
Around 5 feet.
You mentioned an HOA in the presentation. Have they made any statement for or against this?
Not that I'm aware of. The city does not require an HOA approval letter for these kind of applications.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Arnold?
Do you know how long they've been in the house?
I do not, but I believe the applicant is present.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Arnold?
Yes, I have one. Would you mind stating your very last couple of sentences on your testimony, please, in regards to the 10-foot encroachment line, or the 10-foot utility easement line?
There's a 10-foot utility easement that runs in the same location as the 15-foot setback. This proposal not only encroaches into the 15-foot setback, it also dips into that 10-foot easement. So, if the board is to approve this variance, staff requests that it include language excluding encroachment into the easement.
Has that, maybe we can ask the owner this when it's his turn to speak, but has that been considered by the owner? Has there been any type of proposal with that? Okay, sorry.
And the reason for that is that we don't have the power to grant a variance to encroach into the utility easement, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
As I understand, an easement is a deed restriction that follows with the land, and you can't change that unless it's abandoned by the owner of the easement, as I understand it. Any other questions for Ms. Arnold? Okay, is the applicant here? Would you please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record? I know that you've already been sworn in.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the board's time tonight. My name is Joshua Florin. I'm the owner of 310 Martell Lane. And so, as we said, much of this was included in the presentation, and I don't want to reiterate a lot of the stuff that you have already heard. We've been owners of the property for approximately 11 years and have been looking at ways to put a covered structure in the backyard for my wife and our kids to enjoy, especially in the summer months. Due to the unique shape of the property itself, most of the properties that are on our cul-de-sacs are facing the cul-de-sac itself. Ours has a backyard side yard that stretches the length or portion of that cul-de-sac. Due to the restrictions in the ordinance itself, that cuts in and creates a hardship for us to really put a structure of any size that would fit a family of 5 underneath it. And so it has really limited our ability to come up with a creative solution to put that in place. As Ms. Arnold said, the property itself is kind of an island, so it does not have neighbors abutting it on any side, much of which we've received letters from all the neighbors that would be on that side of the cul-de-sac, and many others have said they would submit similar letters in support of the project. with the cul-de-sac on the east side, parkway to the north, an alley to the west, there really is nobody around us that would be impacted at all by the variance. The particular property itself is also so unique. I have looked for other properties that were similar, and that unique nature would allow that this particular variance, if granted, wouldn't be a variance that would then be applicable to other properties, because there's just not other properties with this similar layout on other cul-de-sacs that I've found. And so with it being unique and there being a hardship with the way that the setbacks have been constructed, we really don't have any other mechanism by which to place this structure. We've tried various different ways. I also wanted to include that the designer is also on the line. So if there are questions specifically about the setback, because of the nature of that setback and that curved nature through the backyard itself, what happens is, you saw the structure, it's the southeast corner is the only variance. We completely respect the need to keep standards in the city of Coppell. So what you'll see is it's just that southeast variance, or that southeast corner, that we're requesting the variance on, because the structure, the linear structure itself, runs out of that variance halfway down, and then the variance is not in play. When it comes to utility easement, we did consider that. And the utility easement, I would ask Justin Myers, the designer, to speak to the specifics on exactly how much of the easement is included, because it's a couple of feet into the easement, and then of course, because of the curved nature of that easement as it runs out, it's a much smaller portion of the utility easement that's affected, as it runs out pretty quickly after a couple of feet due to the curved nature of the backyard.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question, and of course we can include your designer as well, because, it's all one piece of information. Is there any way to construct this structure within the requirements?
If Justin's on the line, I'd like to defer to him on specifically what other considerations might be in play if not granted the utility easement component.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, I can speak to that point.
All right, Mr. Myers, if you're going to give us testimony, you need to swear in, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give the Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Justin Myers. I am 10325 Vintage Drive in Fort Worth.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
So we have considered multiple configurations of doing a patio cover back there, given the easements, and the current building line setback on the side of the house renders that side of the house completely useless. If there's no way to get a variance to build in the utility easement, I can make adjustments to the design to take it out of the utility easement and to where it is only in the building line easement. But if we don't get a variance, or the building line variance at least, there's no way to actually build any usable space on that side of their house. Just, you kind of see there's really almost no usable space back there unless we kind of dip into that building line easement.
You're fading out there.
Is he done?
Yeah. What other questions you guys have for me?
So are you telling us that you can design it so it doesn't encroach into the utility easement at all?
Correct. Yeah, it sounds like even if the variance is approved, no matter what we do, we cannot push into that utility easement. And we're talking maybe 4 square feet. I mean, there's not much of it that's actually hitting the utility easement because of the curved nature of the side yard.
Did you hear us say that we don't have the power to approve a variance that encroaches into a utility easement?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So if we get the variance approved for the building line easement, we can redesign this to where it does not encroach into the utility easement.
Justin, is there a way to design this instead of it being entirely on the side of the house? It looks like there's a bay window back there that it looks like you're not covering. Is there a way to put some covering there and have the entire area that you plan to build out just not encroach on the building line easement either?
No. So looking at usable square footage, it would be like trying to use a room that has 12 square feet. That's not enough room there to do anything with.
Well, I mean, you could still go past the bay window a little bit. You just wouldn't go all the way to the building line.
There's a pool there.
Right.
So
what's the distance between the bay window and where the pool starts?
I mean, I don't have that exact dimension on me. We'll look.
5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet?
It's about 12.
Yeah, 10, 12. It'd be a narrow strip.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Any other questions from Mr. Myers?
I have a question for Mr. Myers and the owner, kind of in conjunction with one another.
Sure.
If you modeled your proposed structure with the stipulation of not encroaching into the utility easement?
We have not drawn it specifically that way. Yeah.
I mean, if the board were to grant the variance with that stipulation, what is your thoughts on the process on that?
The stipulation being the utility easement is out.
Yes, sir.
Like I said, we would go back to Justin and we would look at that portion and just see what it does to the overall scope of the project to determine if the cost of the structure makes sense with what we might lose in terms of square footage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, personally, I'm in favor of the overall modification. I mean, it seems like it's going to enhance your property greatly, and in anything that maintains that and increases it, then I'm for that. Obviously, we have limitations based on the current building stipulations.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Quick question. Did you put the pool in or was it there when you bought the house?
It was there when we bought the house.
Okay.
Do you believe that the property, I'm trying to find a property hardship.
Yes.
So if you didn't build the structure at all, is there a hardship without the structure?
Right. Besides, my wife would make me move.
Yes. I hear you.
I think the hardship is just trying to find the most usability out of the backyard. We've been in this house for a long time. We've been residents of Coppell for a long time. Our goal was to put something on the back of the house that we could enjoy year-round and provide the ability to increase the value of the home. I think if you look at the materials and the things that we put into it, this is not just a pergola. I mean, this is a full outdoor living area meant to be able to provide more usable square feet for the homeowner, and we're hoping to be that for a very long time. So the hardship really is on our ability to use the property the way we really would like to use the property.
Any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions for the applicant's contractor? Last call before I close the public meeting.
Can I ask a quick question of our council?
Yes.
Can you refresh the board's memory on what the definition of a hardship is?
Yeah, generally, a hardship is based on the unique characteristics of the property, based on its topography, its configuration, and the natural elements. There is some uniqueness to this property. There's not very many pieces of property in Coppell that are surrounded on four sides by public right-of-way, which you have here with the cul-de-sac, the street itself of Martel, in the alleyway, and then parkway on the back. So it meets some of the criteria for uniqueness because of nothing created by them. They didn't create that situation. The situation was the lot was configured the way it was when it was designed originally. And so there's, I think there's some uniqueness also from the fact that the HOA's got some huge area, and now we've got a utility easement which cannot be breached, which is further, I assume that my good friends on the city council through our subdivision ordinance required that easement. So to that extent, the city has created that situation. But he may not, and you may not, allow an encroachment into that utility easement. You do not have jurisdiction or authority over that. So all you have is a side yard setback. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So then, just one question. So then, if we were just to go to the utility easement, what would be the amount of feet that they would be encroaching?
They would end up encroaching approximately 5 feet into the 15-foot step back and be 10 feet off the property line.
So that if it was a 5-foot variance, then that would be something we could allow, but we couldn't go further than that because it encroached into the easement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions before we close the meeting and open it to the board?
Nope.
Okay, the public meeting is closed and it's open to the board for discussion.
Thank you for the board's time.
Anybody? There's criteria that we have to follow in determining if a hardship exists, and it can't be self-imposed. It can't be economic in nature, and it can't be used to relieve frustrated building objectives. We're allowed to grant variances if you can't use the property unless there's a variance. Okay? So we have to consider that when we consider this variance. I understand the frustrated building objective. It's frustrating, but it's not a property hardship in my opinion. It's a personal hardship. Okay. The property can be reasonably used. It's got a house on it already. It's got a pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you can't use the property without the variance. Okay. So that's what my thoughts are on this. Any other thoughts on this?
I'm inclined to agree with you. This doesn't seem like a property hardship. I know that you may not be able to build the outdoor space that you really desire and want, but that's not really grounds for granting a variance, is that you want to do something different. I mean, you can use the outdoor space. You just might have a smaller patio if we can't grant the variance. But I'm just struggling to find the hardship here in that you can't use the property as is.
I would just add that the unique nature of the property, for me, it does lend itself to a moderate hardship. I don't know. I mean, I know we have to be black and white here on the ruling, but with that, knowing that, in my opinion, it's a moderate hardship, then I guess you're not your if you're over the line, then you're over the line. And so, I would be inclined to grant it, specifically since, he's obviously done a lot of work here, the owner has, along with his contractor, and he has sign-offs from his immediate neighbors, who would be the people that would be most affected by the possible construction. And it's a cul-de-sac. You either live there, or you've been invited, or you really don't have much reason to be down there. So, and it also, in my opinion, would greatly improve the value of the subject property, which, again, as a resident of the community, I wholly would agree with anything that would do that. So.
Anything else? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Adjustment, in this case, grant the variance from Section 12-35-2, parenthetical B, parenthetical 2, parenthetical little b, parenthetical II of the City of Coppell zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a covered patio that encroaches approximately 10 feet into the 15-foot required side yard setback by ordinance and by plat on the property located at 310 Martell Drive in Coppell, because our investigation and our determination from the facts and evidence produced at the public hearing indicate that such a variance will not be contrary to public interest, and literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship.
I have a motion to approve the variance. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, vote for approval. Ms. Anderson?
Approve.
Mr. Hickey?
Approve.
I'm going to vote deny.
I deny.
I'm going to vote deny as well.
Okay, the motion did not pass. Thank you for your time. No other business, I guess, so we're going to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman,
Hold on a sec.
before you leave, I will prepare the appropriate orders and send them to Kami, and then she.
Thank you. Okay, we're adjourned.